welcome back into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you for some more talk about the wagering world, college football, sports, and fun. SJ, we're coming off a hot weekend here. Folks got to be pleased if they followed along with the picks graphic this week. We did pretty good.
Yeah, we told you don't give up on us there. We knew that week was just a fluke. It's bound to happen. We try to avoid it, but it's kind of one of those things that just goes that way one week. But showing more of the true colors the way I'm going to look at it here this week. We had a pretty good weekend.
Yeah, good weekend. We'll recap all of our picks, of course, and then we'll talk about what was a pretty wild weekend in college football world. Lots of at least fun games, a couple of big surprises, and no lack of stuff to chat about with what went down on the field here this past weekend. As we get rolling, we always like to talk about what's fueling us here on the podcast, and usually it's not of the solid food variety, it's of the liquid diet. And I don't know, I guess I'll start this way anyways, because I'm going to bring it up at some point anyhow. We happened, of course, to have our leans with our own personal preferences. The Nebraska Cornhuskers are 5-1 heading into the bye week. Iowa State Cyclones 5-0, coming off a nice home night game win against Baylor. I think that calls for a little bit of celebration and having a little extra spice to it. So I pulled out a different thing here. We just bought these the other day, and I hadn't tried them yet, and I kind of like it. It's not something that I would probably have more than like one or two at a time, but it's the Monaco cocktail craft brand. And their Moscow Mule version, which I think is kind of nice. It's got a little extra something going on in it, and I can't quite pinpoint what else is in there to spice this thing up, but it's a nice little change of pace. So that's what I'm rocking tonight. How about you?
Yeah, I think those actually have a pretty good kick to them too. They say 2 shots in every can or something that. I've seen the commercial, so yeah. I actually kind of got something a little bit out of the ordinary here. I guess seasonally it fits in. Well, maybe not with the temperature, but time of the year. I grabbed what is called a pumpkin smasher. This is from Big Muddy Brewing. Looks like it's somewhere in Southern Illinois. So, they probably drink a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming they can make a good beer. So, but yeah, basically this is their take on pumpkin. It's just pumpkin beer. It says they got some spices in there too, whatever that may be. Who knows? But I guess maybe the Yeti, the Sasquatch, or whatever you want to call it on there, kind of drew me in there, and I figured, why not pumpkin beer? We're kind of in that time of year.
There you go. Ladies can have their pumpkin spice lattes. We'll have our pumpkin beer instead. That sounds like a good idea to me.
That sounds way better.
Way better. And probably cheaper at the end of the day, too.
Dude.
Unreal. You drive up to some of those windows and you're like, wow, what limb am I going to cut off for you here?
I mean, I've asked them, I'd not be like a Mr. Cheapskate, but I'm like, kind of reading back the order and be like, that's what I got, right? Just making sure they didn't put something else in and charge you double. Or I was like, I just got one drink.
No, I just got one, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's what it is? Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's what's fueling us here. Yeah, it's a good weekend. Lots of good stuff to talk about. And we'll start here with our picks and recap for you because a very nice week. SJ almost went unblemished. The only thing that got him was his Friday night pick with UNLV. They were favored by 6.5. Ended up coming up short there to the Syracuse by a final of 44-41 in overtime. So it didn't, obviously not far off. And it sounds like, SJ, you got to watch the end of that. They had some chances to maybe pull it off and didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, of course, just if for them wanting to win is a little bit frustrating at the end where there's a couple, 3 opportunities to get a turnover. And these weren't the kind where it's like kind of making that, diving one-hander or just like a kind of insane out of your mind play. I mean, the ball was right in your hands. It's one of those with the quip or the clever analyst says, that's why they play defense. There's kind of like a couple of those plays. So I was like, well, yeah, I mean, in that case, you can't really refute that statement. So that was tough. And then just another thing, I was telling you, I was like, I was very close to taking the overs and that would have hit, of course, hindsight, but it just like I've kind of been talking about how UNLV was a team I'd been liking to watch so far this year. And even the last couple of years is have that little bit more of exciting style. And just, it's always fun to get behind the team because they just seem kind of like they, maybe like along the lines of like a Miami, they just kind of have that little bit of an edge to them. So that's, but I don't hate UNLV like I hate Miami, so it's easy to cheer for UNLV. But that's all I was hoping to get for them to get a win there. But I don't know. Give them a couple weeks here. Keep watching them. I think still maybe down the road, a play here or there, but they could have had that game, and that's probably what makes it. And not even just outside the pick, just probably a little bit more disappointing. As that was one of those ones that's going to kind of come back to, or maybe it won't haunt them in the postseason, but it's going to be one of those that they're going to be like, man, I wish we could have, do that one again.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough one to take like that. Your the other picks down your slate with the hot four other victories you had. Wisconsin was a 14-point favorite. They didn't even need. They could have doubled or almost tripled that. 50.
Just not the halftime and been good, yeah.
52-6 over Purdue. Purdue, wow, falling on hard times. When you're losing to that Wisconsin team like that, that ain't good. Pitt UNC, we both had plays on this game. Pitt wins at 34-24. You were looking for the under. The number was up pretty high, 64.5. I mean, it got, I guess, relatively close at 58, but still, that's pretty comfortable hitting an under like that. So that was a nice feather in your cap. And then I had Pitt as well as one of my picks. They were just minus 2.5. It was, obviously, I think a little hairy there for a while on that front, but they got a 2-score lead there for a while towards the end of that game, and that was a nice start to my day as well. So yeah, double victory on a game, we'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that Pitt North Carolina was closer than I thought. So I felt a little bit hot there at the out of the collar there down the stretch. I didn't even think it would get that close because there's a good 8 minutes left in the game or so, and there's a 10-point game, and both teams were kind of going at each other. So I was a little nervous about that one, but ended up holding off there, and it was actually a pretty good game.
Yeah. SMU was getting 7 against Louisville, and they get the outright victory, 34-27 the final. Nice hit there for you. I did like that play as well. SMU's obviously been on a kind of a big upward trajectory from their early kind of stumbling start. They've gotten a lot better. And, the jury's been out on how good Louisville is. Obviously, that game with Notre Dame kind of hung around. But, yeah, that's a good win for SMU there in that league.
Yeah, I wanted to pick them to get that outright win, but I was just a little skeptical when they had been in the big moment. I know BYU is a good team, but they didn't kind of look like themselves in that game. So I just played a little bit easier there, and was kind of leaning on that concept of what you mentioned of that Notre Dame game kind of being a hangover, if you will, or just the emotional letdown of losing a tough game like that. A lot of times hangs enough to, in my mind, I was like, well, they might win, but it's going to be by a field goal if they do, or something like that. So that's why I felt good with that 7.
I could jump over to my side here real quick just for a couple. Army laying 11.5 against Tulsa. I felt pretty good about that one just because Army's been playing really well. And I had watched Tulsa earlier in the season, and they just did not look like a good team at all. And I think that's really the case. The final 48-7, Army gets the victory. So nice, comfortable win there on that one. And then one of my big ones on the day that I was playing, I kind of included this game in multiple things that I was doing throughout the day because I had a couple little parlays going too. But Toledo, they were laying 6.5. It was, they in question for a while. Obviously, they only win it by 10, but they get it done, 30-20 the final. Obviously, having a very good season. Some of those MAC teams are pretty strong. It's going to be fun to watch the MACtion once it gets rolling here, because they've looked great in the non-conference. Obviously, all of them have some big wins over named teams, and yeah, it's going to be a battle.
Hey man, it's always gonna be Taco Tuesday, but at the same time, but we have some Toledo Tuesdays going on here too, because yeah, they do look good. And you even mentioned your Army pick before that with the Navy too, both being undefeated. Yeah. Those are, I mean, Air Force is looking decent too, so we might have to keep it closer on those armed services and make a military Mondays or something. I don't know what we're gonna do here. Everything can have a theme.
Yeah, we got to bring in another day of the week here somehow. Yeah, they've been awesome. And I did kind of package it with the next game of yours that you had there. The Clemson Tigers were laying 14.5 is what you got it at. And they ended up getting the victory. It did get a little hairy at the end because they were up early when I saw it. It was 17-0. They jumped out to the lead. and then they let Florida State kind of creep back into it a little bit. They did get a late field goal, though, to help make sure that the cover came through for us. 29-13 ends up being the final. They were really chunking at the end there, too. It looked like they were going to score a touchdown just to seal it, and it felt good. But then, stalled out in the red zone, and kind of one of those you had to sweat out a little bit. But ultimately, they got it done.
Yeah, I don't want to dog them too much because they did get the win, and that's what they're going for. But the way we're looking at it, it was a little bit of kind of lackluster, which is why I had been off on Clemson and went against them a few times and ended up paying the price just because they, kind of put together a performance that was unexpected, at least the way I'd seen them play or what we were thinking. So there's still even here, it wasn't all that impressive considering the Florida State squad that they put out this year. I mean, you've probably been just seeing the clips of practice where I guess the head coach used to do is he's a goof out there sprinting everywhere and doing all this stuff. And I guess it was like a race to the team, and like two of the players were involved, and everybody else was like ran off to the side. I guess it was like kind of like a team thing, like just like sprint to the goal line, beat me there, almost like a PJ Fleck kind of corny ass, like freaking total frat bro type thing. But he's kind of that way anyway. So, but it was just kind of just showed that you would look at the sidelines and during the timeouts, and players are just yelling at their position coaches and everything, and just because they don't friggin' they're not only are they checked out, they don't feel like they're like part of any type of like program. They're just kind of floating in the wind here. So they're willing to kind of make those public scenes where you might not do that out in the open and kind of have your arguments behind closed doors.
Yeah, I caught on to that idea of paying attention to that stuff a little bit more a few years ago. Of course, I attend quite a few games in Ames, and there was a particular game where I went to watch Iowa State play Kansas one year, and it was when Kansas was still Kansas. In a while, they've kind of fallen back to that this year again, but when they did, things were not good for a long time, and it was a year after I guess they had a little uptick there. Beatty was the coach, at the time. They kind of got a little, excited about it for a hot minute, and then the next year it just fell apart again. And I remember because I was down real low for that game, and I was watching. We were right behind the Kansas bench, so I'm just paying attention to kind of what's going on, and you're just seeing all this like weird interactions that just didn't make sense. Like, oh, this coach goes and grabs these couple of guys real quick, and they have this little conference and huddle, and then this other coach is over here, yelling at this guy, and then at one point there was a bad special teams play for them, and I saw one of their assistants just kind of do one of these things where he rolled his eyes back and then just shook his head for a moment, and it's like, this is a disaster. Yeah. These guys know. They just know it's not going right, and that's sad to see sometimes.
Well, we all have those kind of, I guess, if you maybe an analyst you follow or just a friend, or like if coaches and stuff that kind of put too much, to me, a little bit too much emphasis on body language all the time, like reactions. But these are there are circumstances where that's kind of like not in quite, it's like undoubtedly obvious like what's going on here, just where it's kind of just falling apart in front of your eyes. And I guess that's kind of more what we're speaking to, because I that does bug me until I put that out there, where people are like, oh, like every little movement is kind of critiqued and analyzed. But this is not what we're referring to here. This is more of the kind of just, I mean, even you see in the end of the Alabama game, dude's throwing a freaking little fit like a baby. Like, I'm like, seriously, like you had, I mean, yeah, I don't you be mad like that. You should be mad. You shouldn't like to lose. Everybody should feel like, disappointed when they lose. But like that type of stuff, it's like you had, whatever, 60 minutes or however, before to do something about it. Like, it's, I don't know. That's not the place for it. And it's just like, I don't know what you make. If you make it think you look good in any way, then I guess you just maybe need your head examined.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look good. It doesn't make you look a competitor. It makes you look like a freaking little spoiled baby.
Yeah. Oh, and I know, because I just saw that here looking back at this stuff today, and of course the comments get just as stupid online between people of what they think of it. But somebody's like, oh yeah, well, that just shows that he's a competitor and that he cares, and like there's a fine line between that and just being an immature idiot. Like, I mean, that was, you go kick the damn ball after it's played, like you're a fucking idiot. Like you're dumb. Like. Yeah. Nobody's thinking that you're tough because you launched your mouthpiece 20 yards down the field. Congratulations. Like, I just don't understand what that is for. Yeah, like you said, you should be mad. You should be frustrated. But take it out on the field. Go make a play. Don't
Right.
you make yourself look
Yeah,
like
I'd
a
like to
fool.
see his stat line and kind of maybe look at some film and see what he really did to affect the game and if he even has that. Because I didn't watch that one that closely. I was other things going on at that time and just kind of seeing the score pop up here and there. But I just like to see if he really did have a chance to affect the game, and maybe he did. But either way, that's still not a good team. And just and I'm always I had to watch it a couple times. Like, did this freaking dude really do this? Like that's so immature. I'd be like, dude, I
You're
would
out.
not like
Yeah.
when someone like that. I'm like, dude, you're gone. I'm sorry. I don't
Uh-huh.
care how good you are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so we'll obviously we'll touch a little bit more on that game here in a moment, but yeah, that's tough stuff to watch. The other couple of picks there we had on the slate, I missed a couple. South Carolina did not. I thought getting 9 was enough just because Ole Miss had kind of fallen on their face the week before, and I kind of thought that hangover would continue a little bit. And South Carolina looked good at times, but yeah, they couldn't keep up. 27-3 was the final in that one, so didn't catch that one. And then Oregon State also kind of laid an egg. I really thought that they would control this game just because I thought Colorado State wasn't very good, but ended up having to go to overtime. They do win by 8, but I needed them to win by 11. So 39-31 the final. Take a lump on that one. But otherwise, I mean, especially the ones that we were heavy on, especially, and obviously the majority of your picks. So it's a really good week, and I feel pretty damn good about it after it was all said and done. It was nice to hit some. The one
Yeah,
that I
with that with those
oh,
top, go ahead. I was just say with those top five, it's just I think that's maybe a good little happy place for us to kind of zero in there and really guys kind of really tail those now because we're kind of throwing out the maybe the more the dart throws or the a little bit more of a long shot. We're just going to really pick what we're confident in. So just going forward, that might be something you can really pay attention to at the top five we're doing here.
yeah, yeah, the one I got lucky, and I should have put this out there on the socials when I thought about it the day of, but I did end up getting lucky and hitting one that had the four bangers I mentioned: Navy, Army, Toledo, and then I was watching that Clemson game close, and that was the last leg of that, so I did end up hitting a nice little parlay on that. Don't I do a few of those, especially with I've got a deal every week with my cousin. We obviously both love college football, and we've done this for a few years now, where we kind of follow games each week, and then Friday night he'll send me a list of games that he likes, and then I'll kind of compare it to the list that I've jotted down during the week, and we put together a couple of fun. We'll do a 3 or 4 teamer here and there, and just have some fun with that, and it's kind of fun to score watch and do that. So nice when you hit them, that's for sure. It's not obviously very likely most of the time, but it's nice to hit a few here and there, and obviously we're just sprinkling on it too. We're not going hog wild on the what we're wagering, but it's nice to have a little fun like that, and I'm sure a lot of you do that as well. So yeah, whatever you have fun with, and however you like to package it together, that's certainly we encourage. Getting into the games, obviously, I guess we can go back and just start there because it's the highlight of the weekend for a lot of folks. Obviously, number one team in the country goes down after just winning a thrilling game over another powerhouse team. You almost blew the game against Georgia and somehow find a miraculous way to win it, and then now you turn around and lose to what perennially has been the bottom of the SEC in Vanderbilt. Obviously, they've been a very confusing team this year, up and down all season long. But they have some fun players and obviously good enough players to beat, just about anybody on a given Saturday. And they proved it against Alabama and really controlled the game. I mean, they jumped out to the lead and held on to it really throughout. So credit to Vanderbilt, played a hell of a game. But as you alluded to, with the kind of some of the stuff that went on, with the frustration that you saw coming from Alabama at the end, it just seems like it's, not quite the same Alabama. Obviously, it is a new coach that maybe changes things, but yeah, that was a moment that they just they weren't ready for. Apparently, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the conversation we had the last week was kind of like I'm sure it was last week, either that week before. Who knows? I get these damn shows days. It's all the same, right? But either way, we talked recently. I'll just say recently about just kind of being week to week especially when it comes to college football, but sports in general. And maybe that was obviously a less for Alabama, not so much like this week because. I mean, I honestly just think Vanderbilt just outplayed them. I mean,
Yeah.
they almost like out athleted them at some points in the game. It's not like it's one thing if you like lose 17-10 or something, just play like dog crap and
Mhm.
they score. But I mean, Alabama made a run at them, come back, then Vanderbilt make a play here or there. It wasn't like it was kind of one of those snooze fests. Like it was a back and forth thing. But my point was just maybe we put a little too much stock in that 28-0 kind of quick run out against Georgia and thinking, oh, that was kind of all they did until the very end there, where they again had to pull some plays out because they have those athletes to do that. The scheme or the system or whatever offense and defense they're trying to install with the new coaching staff obviously probably isn't where they want it to be. And how can it be in 1 year?
Mhm.
No one's expecting that. But maybe they're just leaning a bit too much on that. Oh, we got the players, we'll just make plays when we need to. And I mean, yeah, you can do it, but who's knows that a lineman's not going to jump off sides in that play, or
Mhm.
you're not going to get one of these terrible penalties we've been seeing in recent weeks, or the team's not going to make a play, or interception, fumbles, and whatever. Like there's just a lot of variables. I think when you rely on that kind of hero ball, if you will, I guess that's what we call it more in the youth, kind of youth leagues and coming up, is just that's a tough way to live, even when you do have the best players.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, the way that the game played out, it was, yeah, Vanderbilt always punching back. I mean, they made plays. They had, great ground game that helped them out throughout the game. I wasn't able to watch the game, but I did listen to a good chunk of it on the wraparound as I was making my travels on Saturday. And yeah, I mean, the announcers even were just kind of like, oh, well, hey, Vanderbilt, hey, here he goes, makes a play again. Every time you thought that here comes the turn of the game, the momentum's going to swing the other way, because obviously when you have that stupid number in front of your school, that you kind of think that way, a lot of people. But it just never happened. Yeah, they just kept fighting it back and making plays, and hats off to them for doing that. It's a lot of fun, obviously, and of course, time and time again, you've seen it. Like if a team is able to do that and get it to the fourth quarter, it just seems like it gives that much more, that percentage chance spikes on the side of the underdog, because they've got that good vibe feeling. Obviously, usually the crowd plays into it a little bit as well. I know Vanderbilt's not a intimidating place to go play,
Hey, once
but
they get those cranes moved out, it'll be a lot tougher to play there. Once they get that scoreboard put up, and what they say they're out of fireworks that one game on the
yeah,
scoreboard.
yeah. Well, and what was so funny is, I don't know if you saw the clip, but there was a moment where Saban made a comment this week on
Yeah,
game day about
yeah,
how it's
yeah,
the only
yeah.
not tough place to go play.
Yeah, and I saw that someone had like the quote out there, and I was like, I didn't know if he had just said it this week or if it surfaced this week. Either way, I thought that was hell of ironic timing for something like that to come out. And yeah, that was pretty good. I like those little extra angles, and I'm sure. I mean, that never wins you a game, but it doesn't help to have a little bit more if you need any more motivation, which I don't think they did, but doesn't hurt to have that.
The other thing I thought was funny, they made a little, I guess because I didn't watch it this week, but apparently there was a point where Saban was wearing his Stanford, cardinal colored tie, and they convinced him to take it off and put on the gold and blue tie, because they were doing the Cal, Stanford or Cal game or whatever. And so then, of course, somebody made a comment. Oh, there it went. Bama's run is over. He took off the crimson tide and all went to shit. Like they lost the game. But on that note, I did another thing, that a point that was brought up later too, watching that clip of that young kid making himself look like a fool at the end of the game, was there somebody made a comment. Saban leaves the program. This is now what you have. Obviously, it's an isolated situation. You can't just say one player doing that is, or in relation. But at the same time, it does make you think a little bit too. Like, would he have had a different reaction to how that player made himself look on the field? Because like we just both alluded to, I think that's a moment where as a coach would immediately get that guy off the field. I mean, you're done. You're going to sit down for a while at least, and maybe not even be part of my program anymore if that's what I decide. But yeah, that's an interesting thought. I don't know how much that culture changes when a new guy comes in.
Well, not even that. Would the player even felt the freedom to do something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Now that it's like these guys that are there, it's like, of course they weren't going to send them away because of talent level with the new coaching staff. But at the same time, it's like, well, how much respect is there between former players compared to new players and this coaching staff. So
Yeah,
that's probably, I'm sure there's going to be lots of things like that brought up because when you lose, it's easy to spot that stuff
yeah.
compared to, last week they were, probably
Singing the praises.
shooing for
Yeah,
the playoff and, scheduling the parade and everything like that, getting back in line with the Dodge Chargers or whatever bill or whatever cars they used to give away. Was that what I don't know, whatever it was. But anyways, now they're back to square one, I guess.
yeah, yeah. It's college football is a great thing. That's why we love it. We love games like this. It's perfect for just keeping that conversation going, and perfect for obviously the fun of being able to watch every week and just not knowing what's always going to happen. So that was a prime example of it. There were plenty other prime examples of it as well throughout the weekend. Plenty of other ranked teams that did not survive the weekend. The other, I guess, to me, big surprise was Tennessee falling to Arkansas. Surprising game there. Obviously, Tennessee had looked very good up to this point in the season. Another team that had an offense that was kind of rolling, and then just couldn't find it this weekend. And yeah, it goes to prove again, week by week, you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, probably not a total shocker, but Washington, I guess, knocking off Michigan was probably
Yeah,
like medium levels. Just because even after that USC game, I still wasn't. I mean, we said it. I wasn't that high on Michigan, so to see them lose one surprise. I think that one kind of slipped by the goalie being like it wasn't the main attraction. And I think if it was on NBC, maybe even Peacock, if you didn't have cable, so kind of got hidden there in the weeds. But yeah, I guess USC was disappointing as well.
hmm,
Um, I mean, they got Penn State this week, I think, coming up too. So they're looking like they're going to be, from a few weeks ago, making a run here. They're going to have a tough end of the season, and probably the one that I guess just I don't know, kind of more of the way it played out was anything was that late night between Miami and Cal, was just kind of it was a little I don't know, and disappointing. Not even the works we have a plan. I don't really care who won, but just like I don't know. It seems like the calls are just getting in the way of a lot of games anymore, and I hate. I've never been a blame the refs guy. I hate blaming the refs, but it's like, man, at some point you got to just do your job a little better. Like, dang, it's,
yeah.
it's like
And they've
there's
certainly
no
gotten the right end of the
consequence.
stick. Yeah.
Well, no, everything they say is always like, well, they're graded and they're graded by what? Like, I mean, yeah, let's see these grades and then let's see is there any consequences for your actions because it doesn't appear to be the case.
Yeah. Well, and the old thing too. I don't know if they still do this anymore, but the old joke back in the day, because the team I root for was on the wrong end of things a bunch of times, and you'd get the apology letter, from the league.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, what does that fucking do me?
Yeah, we messed up.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. We still lost the game. So what is that? Yeah,
Yeah,
or they
yeah,
just say, you send in the clips of like what you thought was a bad call. Well, and even if they say you were right, well, you know, where does that get you?
yeah. Well, and I think what's
And I
interesting.
guess I don't know what I'd want to happen, but
Yeah,
something there has to be some. I mean, I'd be fine with maybe like they can like those. What do you call it? The targeting thing. They sit out the first half of this next game. Let's go ahead and do something like that.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
make them stand there, just
yeah,
stand there and watch with their undershirt on, but no ref shirt on. And then
yeah.
when it starts to get their zebra stripes back on and hustling out there.
That would be funny, actually. Yeah, you have a mandatory training or something. I don't know what do you. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get relegated to call a Missouri Valley game instead of the
I
Power
was thinking
Five
they got
this
to
week.
spend their mornings, flag football or something. It's a little community service because we know, or even just youth tackle football.
Oh God,
Those games can get and deal with those parents for a little bit, and then maybe you'll do a little bit better when you got in the big spotlight.
yeah. Um, and it's just the thing about it too is obviously it's just so much more magnified anymore because I
Mhm.
mean it's always been important, but now you've lumped in all this money that's
Yeah.
involved, with the players themselves, with the people that are wagering on it. Like it's yeah, that riles people up a little bit more, gets their blood boiling a little bit more. So I don't envy that, pressure, I guess, but yeah, you have a job to do and you need to do it well. So there needs to be some kind of recourse for that. I just think it's funny too that you know I think we are at a better point maybe than we were, and I guess some people would probably argue this, but
Hmm.
with the replay part of it, I think we do get a lot of calls more correct because we can go look at it and see it, but are we any different than where we were before as far as like accuracy and people being happy with the outcome? Because I don't know if we are.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think, I mean, just as in general, just to put, don't like to do this, but in this case, the generalized such statement is, I think people are always going to be claiming about the efficient because it's easier to blame someone else than your team. So,
Yeah.
with that said, like, kind of put that to the side. I guess my thing is, like, when you see all these, the ones I'm referring to is, I mean, you got even when you see a replay, it's like, "I don't know, it's close. I don't know, it's close." Both announcers say, "Well, obviously it's close. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a fucking replay." That's why it's being replayed. It's a close call.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't have to tell me it's close. We know. So that the first part, yes, it's a close call. So to me, it doesn't make you look bad if it gets flipped because it's so close and it's happening so fast. It's in the moment. You might not be in position, trying to get in position, but just couldn't get around to where you can see it. And with so many cameras and all the technology, like, why not take advantage and get it right? So that, to me, that's the goal. Always been with replays, to get it right. Doesn't mean you're bad if you messed up on the initial call, but just get it right in the end. And when it seems like, I mean, you can't never say everybody, but it seems that the majority of people think this thing, and then somehow still you come to the other conclusion. That's when it's like something's definitely
Yeah.
off or wrong, and you just don't want to admit you're wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. When you do have a replay and it is fairly obvious, you think, and then yeah, it still goes the wrong way. Yeah, that's kind of mind-boggling. I don't understand what the process is and why. I mean, most of these conferences anymore have these command centers or whatever where they've
That's
got
what I'm
other
saying.
people looking at it. So it's like this should be easier. We've got more eyeballs looking at it. You should come to a better consensus, and it obviously should be faster. I mean,
Mhm.
we see it in some cases it is, but sometimes it's like just make a damn call at this point because I don't care. Like we need to move on with our lives. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you don't get it right when you have that much more, I guess, technology and minds behind it.
Well, I don't think even people fans would be that upset if you just take the onus off of the officials if you really need to, if they're that sensitive, and just make the command center, or whatever you want to call it, replay center. They tell you what the call is, and then you go with that. Because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's what the NFL does, anyways. Like, just go with that. Like, so it's not like I changed it. Nope, they said that's what it is, and that's what it is. So, and
Hmm.
they're not there physically to be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
accosted or
Yeah.
whatever you're worried about. Someone's gonna follow you to your car with a freaking tire iron or something like that. Like, I don't think that's gonna happen anyways.
Yeah.
That's what I love, that at the end of games you can still see it when they just get kind of merge together and they all sprint off the
Yeah.
field
Get
together.
out
It's
of
like,
here real
okay,
fast.
yeah, you don't worry, buddy, you're safe.
Yeah, you got to be a real lunatic to go to that level to injure somebody. But yeah, interesting. Obviously, and you mentioned this before we even started. Like, Miami fans cannot complain about shit the rest of the season because they have gotten the good end of the stick here. Could have two losses, and they're still sitting here unblemished.
Yeah, Christmas has come early for South Florida. They're on the better side of. I mean, you look at that. I mean, that's a big difference with two losses here compared to where they are now. They're going to be, if not with. I mean, they're probably get the projections out there. I'm sure they're in the playoff
Yeah.
at this point. If the season in today type thing.
Oh
So
yeah.
that makes a big difference with those two games there.
Yeah, it gives them like a huge leg up in the league. That's for sure. But yeah, what a collapse by Cal in that game. I mean, you have such a gigantic lead, and somehow you just piss it away. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, credit does go to Miami, like you said. I mean, as far as the comeback goes, I mean, they made the place to get in that position. So, and also at the same time, discredit with, I don't mean just run the ball and punt. At the minimum, you're probably going to run the clock down to a point where it's very hard for a team to come back. But at least and it seems very simple, and I know it's easier to say when your job's not on the line, but you would think if your job is on the line, you'd want to do the more common sense thing to get a victory and seal that win up.
Yeah, really wild. Um, another game. Obviously, you already mentioned too that was a surprise was the Washington win over Michigan.
Mhm.
Like you said, not still sold on what Michigan can do, anyways. But I think this just kind of like even that and that USC Minnesota game that kind of just shows us, doesn't it, that this league is so much everybody kind of between hairs, and then you got Ohio State because I think that's
Well,
what it's setting up
yeah,
as.
and it's like, so it's a lot of new too. That I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because with these teams we mentioned, that's all. I mean, I know Washington and Michigan played last year in the champ, but it's still a different team. But there's so many new opponents. I mean, when you look at this week, I guess they've been bowl opponents, but you got Oregon and Ohio State this week, so we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, obviously, I'm sure Ohio State's going to be the favorite, but even still, like that's a different in season matchup. You usually when you see that on they see that's going to be the opponent, you got a 7 to 10 day buildup because it's going to be your bowl game or your postseason
Mm-hmm.
game or something like that. Now it's like, oh, you just gotta a week to prepare for a 4 days practice, and then let's go and get to work. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I think that's a. I mean, we talked about it in the kind of our preseason special or whatever you want to call it, just how the newness of teams and just kind of the week after week after week of it might not look like, oh my god, it's going to be a hard game, but just a little bit of more of a grind than even more so than before with that many teams in a conference.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly has proved itself that way so far. I mean, it would be illogical to say that.
Well, because even Wisconsin, gave them a tough, and Wisconsin, Minnesota, no one would think that they're gonna do
Yeah.
anything as far as the big picture. But it's just I don't know. Then they're getting up for it because like I got a chance to play USC, So if you're off off your game a little bit, then they're definitely gonna take advantage. I mean the presumed lower tier teams are gonna do that on
Hmm.
both these conferences. Even look at the SEC where they got about just as many teams here. We'll see how
Yeah.
some of these games start playing out as you get later into the conference year.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah, and I guess I kind of even spaced Oregon. Still don't think of them as a Big Ten team. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the only conference I can get right. All the other ones, I'm at the same thing. I'm like, okay, hold on,
Right.
SMU, the ACC, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's go.
Obviously, they'll have their chance to prove it, but they'll still think I think Ohio State's like head and shoulders. There's
No,
just such a
at
better
this point,
team,
you
but
kind of, yeah, at this point, you have to. There's no evidence to be the contrary. So if you don't, if it's something that you don't like the team, that's fine. Just say that. But as far as on the field and what you've seen talent wise, like yeah, definitely.
yeah,
I do think their quarterback play is going to be a little bit of a issue going forward, but other than that, they're real good.
yeah. I agree. I was impressed by the way that they finished that game this week. Obviously, I didn't expect Iowa to beat Ohio State by any stretch of the imagination, but I did think it maybe could be one of those where like, their defense always is good enough to keep them hanging around a little bit. And it was for a little bit in that game, but then it's like Ohio State decided, oh, we're going to turn on the Jets in that third quarter. It was like, this is absolutely over. We're going to pound you now because they just making plays. And I don't know if anybody's, I didn't see much of it, but I'd heard about this. The Agbuka, their wide receiver, made just a ridiculous one-handed catch for a touchdown in that game. Obviously,
Mhm.
Judkins is a terrific tailback. Like they got some dudes. They're just hard to stop, and especially for 4 quarters of play. And I think that's why I feel like they're such a better team than most in the conference. But obviously, this week will probably show us a lot when it comes to a different type of matchup there against an Oregon. Other games that I did want to point out, one other that we didn't mention yet, as far as like this isn't an upset in my mind, but the way it played out was shocking, I think, to a lot of people. Texas A&M absolutely blew the doors off of
Oh,
Missouri,
shoot.
41 to 10.
Yeah, that actually was pretty shocked. I mean, just because I didn't, I'm always kind of a little slow to jump on the Missouri train just because the way the style of play and just also I don't think their quarterback is good as a lot of other people do. But I did not think I actually thought they might win a close one or maybe lose by a touchdown, but not they got. I mean, that was not a game ever.
Yeah, it was like from the jump. A&M was up. I think I don't know how much minutes into the game it was. I should look at the scoring. It
It
was
couldn't
like
have been more. It was definitely
mm,
early in the first 10 minutes, maybe 10,
yeah,
14
10
nothing,
minutes.
maybe.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah, it was already 10-0 there in the first quarter. And then they added 14 more before halftime, and Missouri was shut out in the first half. So yeah, I mean it was absolutely a beatdown. Um, but yeah, I mean from what you saw earlier in the season from A&M, it wasn't like, oh well, this is a juggernaut team. Like they're not going
Right.
to go pound anybody, but yeah, here they were, put Missouri kind of in their place, so to speak, and yeah, surprising just because of I think the expectations. I mean, Missouri is kind of they're usually on the other side of this. They're usually people not expecting them to do things, and they
Yeah.
kind of creep up throughout the season, and it seems like they get better. But it's gone the other direction this year, and I don't know. This might be an indication it is going to continue to go that direction too for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems kind of for them that seems to be the story of if they're the expectation are there, it's always been tough to deliver on that.
Hmm.
Now, and when it's not, it's like you said, they'll do the opposite and score or make it to the SEC title game in their first year in the conference, and then
Yeah.
you never
Yeah.
hear from them again.
Yeah.
So that seems that's just the way. The only thing that stood out to me really, I just think we got to throw some a little bit of keep that Gene T for Heisman campaign, get that going for Boise State.
Mm-hmm.
That freaking dude. I mean, just like they look at him and like I ain't no seem that good, and then he's like, "Fuck, he gone, boy." Like he just like it's weird. Like he just like he doesn't seem like doesn't have like that prototypical like. I mean, obviously he's dynamic. Can't say he's not with the yardage he's putting up for Boise there, but it's just I don't know. It just it's kind of
Yeah.
weird how players. I mean, I'm glad it ends up at a place that maybe isn't gonna, isn't the prototypical, I guess powerhouse team, and maybe give some love up there, and maybe for once we can give it to the best player instead of a player on the best team.
Yeah.
Because the best player in general, that's what it should be. So
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, the dude had a 63 yarder and a 75 yarder this past
no
week.
matter who you're playing against, like that is some. I mean, a lot. You look across the country. I don't know if there's. I'm not even trying to be like that fun. I mean, it sounds funny, but I bet there's several teams that played over the weekend and probably in the top 25 that didn't have a running back rush for 75 yards total in the game.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, and like one run. So it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah, the
I
dude
mean, you
went
kind of
for
gotta,
he goes for 186, 14.3 was the average in his carries this
yeah.
past weekend. Obviously, not playing a very good team, but still, like, man,
I mean, he's
dude's
doing
incredible.
it. I mean, not exact numbers, but he's doing the same type of stuff every week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they played Oregon already. I mean,
Yeah.
they almost knocked them off, and he's a
Mm-hmm.
big reason that was the case. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
Well,
we need to get that train rolling. I think
I
so.
agree.
Hopefully, we get a billboard up in Times Square or something. Whatever we got to do here.
Yeah. Well, and I think, this weekend, too, as far as the running backs are concerned, probably set him apart a little bit, too, because he continues to do it. Caleb Johnson, who had a terrific start to the season for Iowa, I think, he's got a tough sled to
Well,
hold
he
because
doesn't
they
have
know,
any help. I
yeah,
mean,
everybody
yeah,
knows what they're going to do. They're going to try to
yeah,
stop him, and that's what they do. So,
hmm
obviously, Ohio State knew that, and that's what they did. So,
yeah,
yeah, that makes it a lot harder. But I think, teams that play Boise State probably think that too. Well, we're going to try to stop this guy, and then nobody has.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, just in that Oregon game, we just brought up 192 yards, almost 8 yards a carry, and three TDs. Long run of 70. So,
yeah.
I mean, I know Oregon's not known for their defense, but it's a top 10 team, so can't really say much about that.
And I know that we're kind of both obviously people that are proponents of guys doing whatever they feel is best for them, and if they got a chance to make some money, go do it, kind of thing. But it is cool to see a guy like this who did have many opportunities to
Oh
go
yeah.
somewhere else and just said, "Nah, I'm good."
Mhm.
I know what I'm gonna get, and honestly, I don't know. He's probably getting some decent money out of that area too, as NIL stuff. I mean, it's a
Get
big
a
town.
Orida deal or something up with the
Yeah,
potato companies. Yeah,
exactly.
they got a
Yeah,
little money in that up there. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Some tater
yeah,
tot deal.
yeah. I mean, somebody with the blue turf people got to be sponsoring him. I don't know. Like he's got to get some deals going here. So yeah, it's probably not the worst thing in the world. And obviously, I think he knows that he's got a future beyond
Yeah.
this college game. So pretty cool to see that happen.
Well, well, no, if that you don't even know how it's going to work out. Just because you go to a better program doesn't mean you're going to have a better season or it's going to work together. It's going to fit. Sometimes it is for that familiarity reason. It is
Hmm.
a good decision to stay where you're comfortable and where you think you can kind of maximize. Some people don't want to be in all that spotlight. You want to kind of just
Yeah.
chill out, and kind of be in the background and just do their work and have the success on the field. And it works better for some people like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, maybe certain kids care about certain things differently. Maybe yeah. I mean, a lot of people love that attention and yeah, being able to go out and do whatever party fun stuff. Maybe he doesn't give a rip about that. That could be the case. So pretty cool. I think on top of that, I think what's interesting is honestly to me the two most deserving people or players to possibly win that award this year are going to be from teams that usually don't get that love and don't get don't get it because their team's not good enough, or people say that you weren't at a big enough place or whatever. Yeah, him in particular, and then Travis Hunter. Obviously, I think when he's able to play the way he does on both sides of the football, it's hard to argue that the guy's not one of the if not the most incredible player out there on the field. So I think it is interesting. You're going to see those two guys really insert themselves into the argument compared to whoever may be the top contender in the playoff at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was just kind of, I guess, kind of what really got me. I mean, I'm obviously not a fan of Boise State. I mean, whatever they do is cool, and it's nice to see. It's just been they've had some exciting games, but I saw. I mean, it was at least 3 or 4 different kind of Twitter polls, whatever you want to put for that. It's not like they mean a lot, but the top 4 Heisman, and he wasn't in 3 or 4 or 5 of them. I'm like, bro, I don't know what you're watching, and these are supposed, into the game and locked in. I'm just like, I don't know what we're doing here. So
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe it was maybe they was like a scheduled thing and they had that put together before the season started. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, that does make sense. So
Hmm.
that was the only thing kind of got me. I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Um, Something to keep an eye on for sure as the season moves forward, as far as that talk and that argument is concerned. So, lots of good stuff. Obviously, lots of games. I'm sure there's more that we're not, going to mention here, but still, really good weekend of football. We expect some more exciting games coming up here down the stretch as well. It's interesting to kind of gauge where the teams that you follow, where you think they could be, and then looking at it perspective wise as well. Because I will say this, obviously, I have not been alive since Iowa State was 5-0. It says something about the program too. I'll be honest, like, yeah, we haven't been
Mm.
good for a long time. Like, that's the way it is. But pretty cool to be in that spot. And I also at the same time realize that, and everybody does, I think, if just what we talked about, the week to week thing, like, you got to put it in perspective. Like, there's still a hell of a lot of work to do. Like, yeah, this is fun, this is awesome, but you want to carry that on somehow. You got to make that work for you and not be something that works against you. And it'll be interesting to see where teams, like in Iowa State, like in Nebraska, like some of these other teams that have started well, how they take that and move forward with it. Because our local high school coach uses a little line sometimes, and he did early in the season. We had a good start here. He's always like, "Well, it's helmet check week. We got to make sure that we can still fit the helmet over our heads because you don't want to get ahead of your skis." And I think that's a good perspective to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, because even you go 5 or 6, even whatever, and we've seen teams lose 5 or 6 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Then, and it's like, what good did that start do? So yeah, it's very tough to, and always sounds boring too, and kind of just like, oh, you're just being a coach and kind of saying, oh, just one game at a time. But you do have to have that mindset. You don't have to say it all the time, but you just kind of really got to zero in on who you're kind of going against that week. But yeah, it's we got some pretty good games coming up here in this week, so I think we'll know. And even then, if you win 5 games, and of course, with your team in particular beating your in-state rival, I think you have a pretty good idea that your team at least has the ability, to have a pretty good season. So as far as like, who knows what's going to happen, you can't ever like expect anything or be like, oh, when you start going in your schedule and cross
Yeah,
and
yeah.
win, that's when you get in trouble. But as far as the ability to win games, that's different. I was having a discussion with someone, as a fan of the same team, was kind of talking about, well, what do you think about, I hope we can get to a bowl game. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, that's obviously the goal, just because and that's, when you talk about having, not a lot of success in the long term, the thing that to me this bothers me, and it's more just like an Nebraska thing, like it's you're not supposed to live in the past unless it's like negative past, and then they can bring that up and it's all fine.
Yeah.
So like it's you can't like, oh, we had this good season 10 years. Well, that was 10 years ago, but the last 7 years you didn't make had a losing season. Well, I thought we were supposed to talk about the past. So anyways,
That's a
so
good point.
which way does it work? So I mean, I get that the announcers just want easy things to talk about, but
Hmm.
the one thing to bring up is have they not made a bowl game, and technically they made one when Frost was there one year, but they decided not to play. So if they would have played, does that make them that much better that one year? To
Yeah.
me, no. So to bring that up is just kind of dumb shit.
Hmm.
But anyways, and I was just kind of saying, well, I guess to me the way I looked at it is like, and you could do the same thing with your team, whoever it is just maybe like look at it as like this is guess call it whatever you want, but this to be like the games that you should win. These are the games you could win, might win, and then probably won't win. And just
Hmm.
kind of look at it like more like that,
Hmm.
and then just take them as they fall. But it's not necessarily a thing of like, I think across the board, it's showing that you're in every game. And I guess
Yeah.
I don't think it's a mindset of being like anymore. It's not like, oh, you look at the when you talked about the helmet thing, I was thinking of just a helmet game where it's like, oh crap, we're going against Notre Dame or
Uh-huh.
Michigan or something, and it's like, oh crap, then you're like, well, there's no way we can win. I don't think that with how many players can transfer, play to different schools, been doing different things. Like a lot of teams, save for maybe 3 or 4 now, and even then, it's like, well, maybe not because Vanderbilt just kind of wasn't too intimidated by Alabama, but you look at Ohio State and teams like that, it's like, well, maybe again in certain situations, like, oh crap, it's going to be really tough and kind of be defeated before you even step on that
Hmm.
field. But
Yeah.
that doesn't really exist like it used to. I don't think, at least not as
No.
much as it was. I'm sure it's still there to some point, but not where it's like we're just going to show up and kick their ass. I don't.
Yeah.
That happens, but not to the level that it used to. Just the talent is so more spread across the board than it
Hmm.
used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that funny when you hear other fans like during a week, like, oh, well, we got so and so this week. Might be rough, like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, could be, but could not be. Like,
Well, that's always a fine line because I'm like, well, I mean, I get that you don't. I guess expect is like the tough part of it, but it's like you should go in every game like trying to win and wanting to win.
yeah,
Now, thinking you should, like, oh, I can't believe we lost. Now, if you're
true. That's
you know,
different. Yeah.
the number 50th team and you're going against number one, like, I can't believe we lost. Well, then you're just stupid.
Yeah.
But but you should go in and give your best effort. And who knows what's going to happen? Because
Yeah.
who thought Vanderbilt was going to win this week? And that's just this week. Next week we'll have a whole list of other teams that shouldn't
Yeah.
have won that one.
Yeah.
So I mean, so
Yeah.
I think that's just the hard probably as a fan maybe, and I
Hmm.
know a lot of people maybe just didn't play sports and stuff, so it's harder to think. But I mean, if you're playing that, that's the goal to win
Yeah.
always. Like,
Well, I know it sounds cliche too, but it's like I think it has a lot to do with the leadership sometimes on your team too to get your kids not to buy into that. Also, because did Northern Illinois give a shit that Notre Dame had gold helmets? No, they
right.
beat them. Like the kids didn't care. Like that's fine, and
Or
that's
do you see
awesome.
all the history of the campus? They just walked right in there and did what they had to do.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's however you can frame it and yeah, look at it, and I think that does have a lot to do sometimes with your leadership and how you're preparing your team or the things you say during the week. Maybe it might be the little things too. You just gotta kind of subconsciously. Your team feeds, I think, off of how that goes, and it's different. One thing I did want to mention here too, and I don't want to get like I'm singing a harmony song about the team I follow, but I just thought this was cool, just because of for any team, but so Iowa State, Matt Campbell was just passed Dan McCarney last week as the winningest coach in program history. Well, Coach Mack was at the game this weekend, and they brought him in to talk to. He does all the time. He's a guy that they love. He's a motivational speaker type guy. He brings energy. So the basketball team had him stop by at practice and talk, and then he was at the game, and he went into the locker room after the win, after they're celebrating, and he had a line that I thought was like really cool. He said to him, kind of what we're talking about here. He's like, you can't expect anything, and obviously you guys have to go out and work, and continue, but you prove to yourselves that what you need is in this room. What you need to be successful is here. Now you got to go do it. And I think that's kind of powerful for some teams, like we're talking about here, is to get past all the other talk and just understand how you can play, and what you can do and what you can do, and go out and put your best foot forward, and try to make that happen. And I think that helps a lot of teams if they're able to do that.
Yeah, and just I guess last thing along those lines, I think the coaches do have to kind of coach like that too. If it's kind of a nut cutting time, if you will, or a tight situation, you can't coach scared and worried about losing. I mean, of
Hmm.
course, you don't want to do anything stupid, but at the same time, you got to let your players make a play. If they don't, you kind of live with that. live with the consequences there. But you got to, just kind of have that mindset of, not being afraid of making a mistake and go out there for the win instead of maybe kind of laying back and ended up being in a Miami Cal situation or something like that.
Yeah, very true. So it'd be interesting to see how some of these teams handle that, as I mentioned, kind of moving forward. Uh, the new poll did come out today. Obviously, Alabama not number one anymore. Texas is once again. No surprise there. Ohio State at 2. Oregon goes to the 3. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, a hyped up matchup coming up for that one here this next week. You've got Ohio. Well, I guess they're showing 3 and 6 there. Ohio State and Oregon. So that's what's on the docket for that one. Other top 25 games that are of interest: Ole Miss and LSU, 12 versus 13, coming up here this week. Should be an interesting contest to pay attention to. Red River's always fun to pay attention to with Texas and Oklahoma. Why Oklahoma's ranked, I don't really understand, but I'm sure Texas is going to make that go away after this weekend's over. But like we said, you got to play it out. And then Penn State USC. So like you mentioned that one earlier, that'll be kind of intriguing to see how that goes. But certainly Penn State has looked like they can play some pretty tough, type football, kind of hard nosed defense like you'll expect them to do. So that's a few of the games coming up this week. Was anything else standing out to you, SJ, that you're kind of looking forward to?
Let's looking at a couple early lines here. I don't know. I might like that. Even though I don't think they're going to win, Oklahoma's getting 14 right now. So I might take a gander at that. And Stanford, 23.5. Tennessee, 15-point favorite. I think over Florida. I think they're going to come back with, kind of a little bit of piss and vinegar. And I'm looking at that overs, Oregon State and Ohio State. That looks like about 52 right now. So that should be an easy cash on that one. And we got to stay up late again this week. Kansas State, Colorado could be kind of a little after dark, after your Iowa State, West Virginia game there. So just flip right over to ESPN, 9:15 kick there. And then even later, looks like Boise State's going to the island of Hawaii. So that should be pretty interesting there. Maybe get some, a little bit of, maybe we get our guy diving into the beach or something after a touchdown.
There you go.
Really get some social media, hits there and get some viral stuff going out there. So looks like I got some good late night action too. And then I think even early in the week, it's not MACtion, but there's some pretty looks like some Tuesday night games even this week. So we'll see what we can put together here. Again, 5-0, and that 5 seemed to work good. So let's go ahead and stick with it this week again.
Yeah, and it is 2 versus 3. Sorry, I was looking the app that I'm on hadn't updated the top 25 yet, and I knew that was the case. So with Ohio State, Oregon, so that'll be fun to see that type of number matchup. Obviously, we buy into that stuff a little bit, so fans will enjoy that. But just a heads up to the rest of the top 10. Penn State's at 4 now. Georgia's at 5. Miami's at 6. Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Clemson round out.
I know. I was Clemson. Man, I don't know what they're doing there to stay relevant, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I guess.
Yeah, up 5 spots to get to that 10 spot too. That's interesting.
Well, these polls are just so wacky because even looking like Missouri somehow hung in there at 21. Like this isn't like a hate on Missouri show, but just like when you get throttled like that against a team that was like basically they were only in the rankings because they wanted a top 25 matchup in that game, and then you just freaking get embarrassed like that. Just it's weird how this stuff works.
Well, and then A&M moves up 10 spots because of that win. I don't know. Yeah, it's wild. Obviously, that's why we can't put a whole tale of a lot of stock in that. It's good talking points, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean jack squat once you lace them up. Fun stuff coming up here this week. We'll look forward to a lot of fun games. You mentioned those games early in the week. I said that, or I saw that deal the other day where they said, it was like 56 straight days or something of football. That's just freaking awesome.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just thinking like, how am I going to be able to watch? That's my issue. Or try to just maximize is all I'm thinking.
Yeah, exactly. All right, keep track of us on socials at SJMBets, at Cherokee CP. We'll keep pumping out some of that stuff. And, well, hell, since we got football going on every day, might be shooting a lot more at you now as well as we see it. So follow along. Hit us up if you've got ideas or thoughts on a game or a play, or you're upset with our pick or you love our pick. Like this last weekend, we made you some cash. Let us know. We'd love to hear about that. Obviously, we'd like you to follow along and subscribe here to the podcast as well. So you can do that. All the major platforms, including our host here at Spotify. And then we would love it if you like and subscribe and get the notifications on the YouTube channel as well. And we pump out those picks videos for you as well, usually on a weekly basis. So keep track of that. And we love you to follow along and be part of what we're discussing here, because it's all for fun. So we hope you join us. Keep joining us and lock in for those picks later on in the week. Look for it. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.